Hey, hey, hey.
Howdy, folks.
It's one of those tap tap, is this thing on moments.
Your thing is on.
I see Evan trying to connect to audio and then not connecting to audio.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, I think he's facilitating today. Hey,
Hey.
Jim. Hey, Mike.
Hey,
There's Evan.
Yeah, not sure why, but my audio was like, "Oh, you have no audio devices," which suspicious.
Checks out.
You sound like you're running Linux.
This is not Linux. This is Windows
Okay, well,
through KVM and stuff. So who knows? Maybe I screwed up there, but now it's working fine. But yeah, it's almost certainly my own fault for technology choices. That's what I've learned. Okay, we'll get started in just a moment. I'm going to get the meeting notes set up, but I'm going to need someone else to take notes while I am running the meeting. And we look like we've got a fair number of people. So. Okay, looks like Eddie is taking some attendance for us at least. So I will read our lovely intro script. Hello, everyone. Reminder that this is being recorded and posted to LFX and YouTube. So if you don't want that, you may want to leave. Your participation in these meetings is agreement to abide by the Cloud Native's Code of Conduct. Um, I Let me see. Did we actually get someone to volunteer to be a scribe? Not yet.
I can do it, Evan.
Okay, perfect. Um, for yeah, and then it looks like we have people getting the attendance down. So fantastic. There are a few of you who have very short details on who you are. If you want longer details captured in the notes, you're going to need to do that yourself. Okay. Done. Anyone who is new here who'd like to introduce themselves? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is the discussion of the Kyverno Joint Security Assessment.
Oh, I think to follow the normal flow, we would do community demo.
I
And then...
thought that their presentation was the community demo.
Oh, no, no, no. That is a working discussion. So we are obligated to do one fun thing before And just for clarity,
Oh, well, to be clear, I think John said that that was going to be our fun thing.
oh, cool. Okay.
I put it under the presentation, not the community demo.
Yeah, it's fine.
Or that was the
Evan,
intent.
yeah,
But
you guys can override however you want.
Oh, oh, we have both. Okay. Never mind. Great. So, yes, we also have a Jamara presentation. We are fully booked.
Okay, I'll make it very fast, I promise.
Sure.
So, uh, just for funsies, as the community demo, I want to show off Jen's project that I built a little prototype app on top of. Jen and I have been working on the Jamara project pretty much since the automated governance white paper that this group put out finished. We immediately pivoted and started putting that work into a project over in OpenSSF, which is Jamara project. Um, Jen, maybe you could drop a link to that because I'm not going to go deep
I
into
got
what
one.
that. Oh, nice, awesome. So I'm not going to go deep into what that project is necessarily because we've talked about it plenty. But instead, I want to just show off a little bit of a. Here, I'll just share my entire desktop real quick. So what I've been doing, let me do a restart of this. What I've been doing is building out a Flutter app that is built on top of Jamara. So if we pop in here, we can actually, instead of looking at Jamara in all of its YAML format, I got the bottom three layers of Jamara are guidance, which is something like NIST, just general guidance items that inform security stuff. They might also inform compliance actions, and they provide high level recommendations that are not technology specific. And then we have control catalogs, such as the ones that we build over in the Finos space, that can actually cross-reference each other. So in Finos, we have this common core catalog that has a bunch of different control objectives and assessment requirements that map out to threats that you can kind of read a little bit more about. And those, ooh, I haven't tested this link. Let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. So the idea here is that we can then also within layer two, so we can not only map up and connect by ID to guidance documents, but in the second layer, we could also extend other catalogs and map out to those. So here, oh, let me switch version. Um, nope, this one doesn't have multiple versions. This one's one key. Um, okay, so in here, we could actually connect out to reference like the core, right? So we have core threats from that catalog that I just showed you a second ago, but they're being used inside of the data warehouse catalog. So within the layer, you can cross-reference within each other. And then, let me go back to the main page. And then they culminate into our actual compliance activities when we have an organizational risk-specific document that we create. And this page I've spent the least amount of time refining, but it's going to kind of track like, hey, what is our internal policy? Um, who owns that policy? If you have questions about it, who's responsible for implementing the policy? The RACI kind of approach, and then what documents does it reference and point to? So if we have those already in the database, we'd link to them, or if we don't have them in the database, we might just supply a URL for it. And then we would say, when is this policy applicable, such as the technology scope, or you might add geo restrictions here, things like that. And then if you need to modify it, well, we would reference out to existing catalogs like, oh, these are the catalogs that you need to follow as part of this policy. But I wonder if I have one that has modifications. You could also, okay, well, the goal is that you would also create modifications in your policies. So you could say, hey, use these control catalogs, but on these specific assessment requirements, maybe we're increasing strictness or decreasing strictness or omitting a control, things like that. And the thing that's fun about this is that underneath all of this is just the Jamara catalogs that match something that might be in a Confluence doc or in a NIST PDF or something like that. And as long as we convert that over into Jamara, then we get this interoperability between all of the different layers of documents and we can cross-reference them and build these apps on top of them. This is just a prototype of the types of things that get unlocked with that. So pretty excited about using Jamara in general. And this kind of is what I built to show the value to everybody. The end.
Awesome. So our next thing is a review of the other time zones and so forth. We were out last week, but that did not stop APAC from having a meeting 2 weeks ago. And that's their review of what we did. It looks like there was some discussion about the white paper, the Cloud Native IAM white paper, and
I would have been very surprised.
Were you there?
No, I was going to say I'd be very surprised if there was not discussion about the IAM white paper in the APAC call. Yeah.
Yes. So we had a lot of discussion in person at KubeCon as well on the IAM white paper. I don't know if anyone wants to summarize that.
I mean, my feeling is that as a tag, we should make sure we have a document we're happy with. And once we do that, then we should move ahead, and we need to figure out what that process is as a tag. My suggestion is that we need to get it to the point where IAM experts, which is mostly not us, with some minor exceptions, tell us that it's a great document because we're having a hard time reviewing it well. And then we also can fix up the littler things that we can spot that we know are wrong as part of that. Did I miss anything important anybody else has to say?
I think that is, yeah. I think that's most of it. I think there may also be looking at previous white papers we've done and what made those successful, and do we have similar elements in this one, or are there things that we've missed that we should go back and make sure to do. As one example, the Cloud Native Security white paper has a 3 or 4 page executive summary that really lays out some baseline, like, here's some stuff that's different from what you may already have considered, that I don't know that we have similar content in the current. But I haven't finished reading through the whole rest of the white paper, the old white paper, with a careful eye. So there may be more stuff I find.
I think like one thing we all should do though is also be very careful to, I think part of the issue is that there's a desire to find out exactly the steps that need to happen to fix this. And I see this actually with like PhD students working with me writing papers or things like that, or like someone trying to get a patch into a software project. Yeah. You say, oh, you have to fix these things. Then if they feel like they just have a checklist, then often they'll do a bunch of other things that you look at and you're like, wait a minute, like there's still some problems here. Yeah. So we want to be careful that the communication is that sort of like more along the lines, it has to reach a certain level of quality. Then like you have these 7 things, and once you've checked these 7 boxes, it's out. Because I think that was part of what caused confusion and people to be upset in the first place.
And as well, I think I think we may want to go back and revisit some of our, white paper guidelines, and there may be places where we can either tighten things up and explain better, or maybe the guidance is leading people astray. For example, one thing I noticed in the guidelines was that there was a very clear timeline laid out, but no corresponding length guidance. And so it suggests that it would take the same time to produce a 6-page document as a 60-page document, and that's probably not true, at least in the review stages. Okay, TOC meeting updates. I don't think
No,
a TOC meeting that. Oh, well, no, there was one yesterday.
no, it's in the quiet period still. So that ends after next week after Thanksgiving. So first week of December will be the next.
Okay.
That also applies to the project review group. So
So now we've got the project updates. So supply chain insights, I don't have anything. Security assessments, I think we're going to hear from substantially. Anything?
Yeah,
other
let
than
me. There's one other quick thing to mention. So, the supply chain integrity working group in the OpenSSF is starting to like kick off and do things again. They asked for chair elections, and I think Mike, were you in the meeting earlier today?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So, like Mike and myself and one other person, which is, I think, Nicole, are going to be like co-chairs in for a while until like January, and then we'll do like a proper election to figure out what happens. So we're trying to kind of revive this group. And I wasn't aware, I didn't realize that I had just missed the meeting to this. Otherwise, I would have gone. But I'll be there in the future and look forward to working with Mike, who's always a fun person, and Nicole, who I've chatted with a little bit, but am looking forward to getting to know her better.
Excellent. Automated governance or compliance. They have separate bullets, but I think we only have one initiative in that space right now, which is Jen's.
Right. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what we were discussing earlier on the catalog, on the controls catalog initiative. It's currently in the not triaged status, awaiting further guidance. But if we're comfortable with moving it forward, I'm happy to start kicking things off, creating Slack channels and scheduling a kickoff meeting, and then we could, as one of our first items to do, create that readiness standard, and then continue to get feedback from the TOC as we go along. So, main update there.
Were you just waiting on acceptance criteria?
Right, just to make sure that our final output artifact, given it's not standard, it doesn't fall into like a white paper where we have an established process, and it's a YAML artifact, that it would have a home that's probably inside the TOC repo. So I think that was kind of the main holdup, is where do we put things when we're done, and who puts the approval on it.
But we know the general shape of what we want, even if we don't know the exact details.
We need to know who's going to veto it.
Okay. But can that proceed in parallel with the work of setting up the channels and so forth?
Yeah, it absolutely could. I think
Okay.
that's what Jen is saying is like we would like to know before we start doing work whether the work is going to get vetoed for some reason that we can't foresee. So if they can say this is where it's like this is the path to contributing it, this is where it's going to live, this is who needs to review it, right? Then we know in advance like that the work is not going to be wasted work, wasted effort. That's a nice to have. Absolutely, we could do work and then just find out later on who's reviewing it and where does it live. That is completely possible. It'd be nice to have a little bit more confidence ahead of time. But
Sure.
that's Jen's point. I think is that she's saying, Jen, were you kind of saying like at this point we might not get that confidence?
Or we could work together to define that ourselves. And then I think Evan was saying, like, then let someone else say, no, that's wrong.
Oh, like
Instead of asking.
write down the acceptance requirement, PR the
Right.
acceptance requirements.
Yeah.
Right, like saying this will be in the TOC repo, it's going to be in YAML, it has to have this information. Then someone can be like, no, you're wrong, before we actually execute.
Rather than waiting for someone to figure out all the details for us and potentially coming up with answers we don't like.
Yeah, if we do it in a PR, then it gives them the chance to
Yeah.
rubber stamp it or veto it at that point. And then later on, if they merged it, then we can say, hey, you told us this was the process and we followed it. So yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, and then MCP. Does anyone have updates from that effort?
Yeah, the main update is work has kicked off asynchronously. If folks are not in the channel and would like to be added, I can do that. I think quite a few of us are all in there already. There's two main documents. One is capturing the in-scope and out-of-scope content, which is sort of iterating on. They're making good use of Google Docs suggestions. And so proposed changes go in that way for discussion in the comments. It does look like there's getting to be quite a few pending changes that we may need to kind of prod to resolve those conversations a little more formally. And then the other document is the draft of the paper itself, which currently is a little bit light on content. There's a couple sections around the target audience that probably need some clarification. I know Evan asked a couple of questions in that area. And then the other kind of lays out some of the goals, which is still pending. I think some of the scoping. And then there's a section for tasking assignment, but there are currently no tasks there. So definitely looking for folks to get involved. And now that we're kind of past KubeCon, I think that we will be able to spend a bit more time helping this progress forward. The original issue on the TOC board stated that they were hoping to be done by December, and I think that that's probably not realistic anymore. Not that anyone's gonna hold us necessarily to the dates in there, but I'll try and update the issue just so that doesn't discourage folks from joining if they think the work is almost complete when there's still quite a bit to start. And also, before I forget, just back to the previous one, I just changed stuff until somebody will yell at me. I removed the needs triage label from the security controls catalog refresh, assigned it to you, Jen, and put a comment in there that we this falls within the scope of our charter, and we'll need guidance from the TOC on the questions asked there, but we won't have that block the start of the work. So now I will wait to get in trouble.
Okay, let's talk about the Kyverno security assessment now. Since that's the other big item we had on the agenda before we go into the issue triage, which could eat plenty of time.
Yeah, I think we told Andy he has 20 to 40 minutes. Is that right? Is that what you told him, John?
Yeah.
I was misled. Right, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I still feel like I'm in Atlanta, so apologies if I'm slightly slow. I will try to be fast to mitigate and counter it. I'll share the document I've got up here. Right, so I'm slightly out of order for this, so apologies. We did go through a project demo the week before KubeCon, so 2 weeks ago, and this week we are in the naive questions phase. So I have seeded these slightly. We've got some answers back here, got a few more from some of the team. But what I'd like to do for the next 20 minutes or so is just invite some of those extra questions. I will try and do a speed run through my thinking as to how I've sculpted these questions. And of course, Jim is on hand to correct me immediately if I've done anything wrong. So appreciate that. What I'm looking at from an initial naive perspective is what can I do as an end user that if I accidentally misconfigured it, or if I didn't expect this behavior, an attacker could take advantage of. And just looking at how we've done this, and please, in fact, I should probably share this document, shouldn't I? That would be polite. Let's do it here. Thanks, Jim. And yes, so that question is, what misconfiguration or attack on the project or sort of end user mistake would result in a potential confidentiality, availability, or integrity issue to the project, or something that might have a downstream reputational damage issue to a user? And I've just whizzed through from a high level.
Can I also step in and say one thing quick? It's also really helpful at this stage to also just make sure everything is documented and clear, and isn't like buzzwordy or hyperbole. Like Kyverno is a world-class system for blah blah blah. Like, it's like, or it has like industry leading this or has whatever, like terms that don't actually really mean anything. We want to get like really precise definitions of things down so that someone who later comes and reads this can understand like, oh, it has a piece A and the piece A makes these calls to piece B and has a piece B and the piece B does this and so on. So it's also very much about just like making sure the necessary information is there to understand the system as a whole. And if there's security things too, of course we want to point them out, but that's also part of what like the joint the review that all the reviewers do independently is to look for the security issues.
Great, thank you, Justin. Right, so obviously, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, Kyverno is the mission controller, finding Kubernetes resources using these policy types. And we also have the option here to use the common expression language. We saw a demo of how this is all put together a couple of weeks ago. Why is this actually necessary? Well, Kubernetes can do an awful lot, but we don't often use them. I've got in trouble for saying this for many years. Kubernetes configurations are not secure by default. It is a feature delivery focused platform. We can harden it, of course, but I added a few of the ripostes in here earlier. We do need to configure things, and ultimately, especially with systems that we see coming for graduation in the CNCF, the misconfiguration risk is generally the riskiest element for production because these systems have been in production for a long time with end users. So just sort of whizzing through here, we have sort of started to pull out some of the actors. What do we want to do? We're looking to enforce these policies, YAML or CEL, as we've seen before. If the emission controller is unavailable, so the failure modes here, Jim, would that be unavailable because somebody has overloaded the pod and it's crash looping, or there's no configuration, or the network to the emission controller pod is down?
Right. So it could be one of those reasons. I think, though, looking at this in the gold section, maybe the right way to phrase this would be if it's not installed as, so Kyverno has an option to not run as an admission controller, in which case it will do background scanning, and you can use it off cluster, right? So if it's not enabled, maybe a better way, yeah, or not installed.
Do the same thing if you want to tighten that wording up. Great, thank you. So yes to those, but not here. Great. CLI tools and background scanning provide alternative enforcement mechanisms. And then that mutation and generation capabilities to fix, I guess this is workload configurations as they're being deployed. And create the required resources. CLI tools extend this to Terraform doc files. Okay, non-goals. Not designed to fix Kubernetes, as it cannot protect against vulnerabilities in the API server. I guess one example might be the billion laughs deserialization attack. Maybe just to throw something in there. YAML deserialization. That's not the right station, is it? Or underlying infrastructure. Kubernetes policy enforcement may be bypassed to Kubernetes as security flaw.
So what I'm reading from this is that you are depending on Kubernetes implementing admission control correctly. Like in that the machinery actually does what they say it does. That seems reasonable, but yes, if they've screwed that up, then you are out of luck.
Yes, I agree. We all are. And policy enforcement may be bypassed if we have a security flaw. Yes. Yes, very good. Replacing RBAC. Yeah, using these two again. Is that clear to everybody who may or may not have used the project before? What exactly this is, what it is not?
So,
yep.
I'm working on intuiting the actors in your system and what they have access to. And it seems like you probably have two general classes of actors. The cluster administrators who are supposed to set things up correctly, and then users who have access to maybe a single namespace and are supposed to be limited by the cluster administrators' policies. And shouldn't be able to do things to other namespaces they don't have direct access to. Are there other actors, like unauthenticated actors who don't have access to the API server? Presumably, Kyverno doesn't care about that because you're assuming that QBarback works correctly.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm not saying that's an unreasonable assumption to make, only that, okay, so we have basically just two universes of people to worry about. The people who are trying to set policies and the people who might be trying to squirrel out from under them. Whether they be malicious attackers or just somebody who wants to do something and won't be blocked by anything.
Right. Yeah, so the most common usage is policies apply cluster-wide, but of course you can filter or based on namespaces or other workloads. Policies themselves, of course, are a critical resource. So we do expect RBAC to be configured to only allow the right actors or the right roles to be able to access and configure policies. There is a concept of a namespace policy, which a namespace administrator can configure for the namespaces they own and manage, right? So there's both cluster-wide policies and namespaced policies.
Namespace policies are basically guardrails you set up for yourself, right?
That's right. So if a workload
Because
admin,
I could always go in and change my policies if I wanted to bypass them.
yes. So within a namespace, of course, there could be multiple roles. You could have a namespace admin, you could have a namespace user who might have less privileges and may not be able to change the policy.
Okay.
But we don't manage, Kyverno doesn't manage the RBAC. The assumption is if you're using namespace policies or cluster policies, you've configured RBAC correctly to allow only the right roles access to those policy types.
Okay, feel free to keep going. I just wanted to orient myself around different threats.
Yeah, that's useful. I didn't quite transcribe that correctly, Jim. You didn't say it doesn't manage its own, it's something similar.
Yeah, so Kyverno, I mean, obviously we have default, like we have roles for all the Kyverno controllers, but we don't set up like the RBAC for these user roles.
Assume it. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Cool, thank you. And some of this may well shift around. So for that external attacker, I mean, I guess the hopefully unlikely situation of a web-facing socket into a privileged container that has a service account with sufficient RBAC would qualify as an external attacker. So I wonder if that's.
But I guess there could be a bug in software running on the platform that allowed you to run as some elevated privilege. But at that point, I'm not sure if that's Kyverno's.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. It may be. I don't know. I'm trying to.
If as a cluster administrator, I have the availability to set my namespaces and I have an external facing workload that I want to put into the same namespace, a one-liner saying, be aware, if you can get into a namespace that can control this, you're exposing yourself to unnecessary risk, is about as paranoid as one can possibly get, perhaps.
I mean, as a cluster administrator, I can choose to deploy a web shell and an ingress and not put authentication on it, in a privileged namespace. And then I kind of get what's coming to me. Like, you can't.
It's a slightly different use case. It's a trusted external facing service co-deployed with that service account RBAC level in the same namespace that may not have to be. If everything's just been piled into one namespace. So, I mean, like I say, it's perhaps the height of paranoia, but it's just whether or not there is the attack surface is the internet, that sort of thing. But we'll see if there's words to be shared on that at the appropriate points. Right, so just kind of to run from the top down. Okay, joint assessments. Thank you for the self-assessment. It's in a good place. And yes, of course, these are some blanks that we'll need filling in. Right, so the actual design here, for the actual threat modeling portion, I think for some of these, we will kind of go through one by one and just ask, do we understand exactly what this is? I've tried to jump in for some of the ones that kind of stand out. So when we've got a certificate renewal service that could impact the availability because consumers, well, the API server doesn't trust it, just running through the obvious one to start off with. So cool. Okay. And I'll leave these open for other reviewers to come through and sort of understand what we've gone through. I guess obviously there's issues with misconfigured mutations, but I mean again, that's a problem between keyboard and share. And then, yeah, just a question on the denial of service potential for those reporting aspects.
Yeah, and we have encountered those issues in prior releases. So the newer releases have circuit breakers which are configurable. So if a certain amount of ephemeral reports queue up, then it will stop producing new reports until that backlog is cleared, right? So, and this could happen because here we have two controllers who are sharing information, like if one is just working slowly or misconfigured for any reason.
Cool. Good question around the ephemeral reports.
Yes, if again, if they have RBAC or permissions to create that resource, yes, they can. But we are relying that, these are critical resources which by default, only the Kyverno controllers can create. But of course, if you have cluster admin privileges, you would be able to.
I was wondering about namespace admin privileges for the namespace versions of those, because the controllers presumably are cluster-wide.
Yes, the controller is cluster-wide. Yeah, that's a good point. So if you have namespace privileges, you can't, the ephemeral report is still a cluster-wide resource. So you would need permissions to create that, even though the report is reporting on a namespace object or resource.
Okay. So it would be hard to set up the to grant someone RBAC for that by accident.
Right.
I mean, all of that has to be captured here. Like this,
Yeah.
like we're not going to tell people like go watch this video and the QA to figure it out. So like it's kind of nice that we're doing this, but it's also kind of bad that we're doing this because if it's not clear from reading the document, then to someone who doesn't have the state we all have in our head right now, then we're doing them a disservice.
Try to transcribe the questions we've got here. I've dropped it down into the lower section. But Jim, I wonder if some of these will turn into questions where I've put comments.
Yeah.
It's almost the worst thing to do to talk. I'm going to have to refresh my browser because my latency on got extremely slow. A second.
So on that last point, so we do have a section in our docs, and happy to kind of revisit that and also extend as needed. I'll put a link into chat on how we configure the RBAC model, what's configurable, what each controller does, and how you can extend that even for like generating policies, etc. But Justin, yeah, to your point, like some of these nuances of like, okay, what is it that we expect to secure outside of Kyverno? Maybe those could be better covered in that section.
Responsiveness again. Are there any other portions of this diagram that you would value a special interrogation of, I suppose? Configuration obviously is a big one, cert renewal.
I think the thing that stands out to me, and it's not totally clear here, so there's a little bit of intuition I'm doing, is that the admission controller and the background controller have basically write on every resource in the cluster.
No, not by default.
Okay.
So yeah, as opposed to some other projects, so even though Kyverno can be configured, of course, to watch everything, so we don't run with wildcard roles, anything like that by default. In fact, it was a painful upgrade for a lot of users, but we removed all wildcard permissions even for our default demo install. And you have to configure roles explicitly for resources you want to mutate or generate through the background controller. The admission controller can watch everything. So if you have a policy that just says send everything to Kyverno, so it in the match clause of the policy, if you put a wildcard, then yes, the admission controller will see every change that's coming into the API server. There are some, default web configurations to not send, like not apply policies in the Kyverno as well as Kubernetes system namespaces. Those are configurable, but by default, Kyverno doesn't watch those namespaces. But otherwise, for any other user namespace, it will see every resource, every change if you have a wildcard policy. But of course, that's not a recommended best practice. The idea would be to match policies based on a kind or other, criteria like labels, namespaces, etc.
I guess that question makes me wonder about the handling of the secrets kind.
By default, Kyverno doesn't watch secrets or other. I'll have to check, but there's other security related. So like things like config map, namespaces, pods, etc. It those are available by default. But secrets it does not. So you have to opt in if you wanted to like generate or mutate secrets. Again, the admission controller can receive those because it gets those from the API server, and it can apply policies to them. But in order to mutate or generate secrets through policies, you would need to opt in with explicit permissions.
And is that a command line flag at runtime or at deployment time?
No, so that's configurable through RBAC itself. So you would, we have role aggregation for each controller. So you would add another role and give it permission to, watch a secret or generate a secret in that case.
So sorry, I'm struggling awfully with the latency on this. Keep on trying. Well, that looks terminal, doesn't it? Okay, well, seeing as I've got this open as well, just to briefly run through here, I appreciate that this document will have been used to help generate the joint assessment. And how do you see this playing into the self-assessment? Sorry, how do you see this playing into the joint assessment, and what level of focus do you think it needs?
Yeah, so this was something we primarily used for the admission controller portion, obviously because it relates to that. I think there was a question or comment on the assessment document and what about the other components, like if you run Kyverno off cluster. So I think that's a good point to address. But yeah, we've like the threat model for the admission controller, which the Kubernetes security SIG had published. We've used that also in our documentation as a guideline for users. So maybe, yeah, to answer your question, Andy, we can, focus on the areas beyond just the admission controller year and leverage the existing threat model for admission controllers.
Cool, thank you. I think I've probably just got enough network left to round this out for the next couple of minutes. The last question up here. So we were just getting to that. There we go. Opt-in bio. Thank you very much. Awesome. And then background controller. Oh no, sorry. You were saying the CLI. Then, sorry. Could you repeat the last one? I was changing windows.
Yeah, so the CLI and background controllers, maybe, yeah, if we focus on those as threat models, then I think, or at least, making sure we've covered those, that would be helpful, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. These all make good sense. We have, of course, last week and a lot of demos to pull some of those configurations and understanding out of. Why is this so slow? That's not the right place, is it? I'll patch that in after we're done. Yes, so for these components, we have the demo from 2 weeks ago with lots of examples of how some of the configuration works. And I guess just the last question to the group then, the functions and features section is quite exhaustive. There's quite a lot in there. Is that clear enough? Would be like a slightly different view of this, if similar?
I mean, I think it's hard to say until we do a proper review, which I think you're probably the only one who's done like a proper review of this. So
I won't lead the witnesses in that case. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. On the back of this, I have pinged the reviewer channel and the GitHub issue. Hopefully this has raised that level of understanding up a little bit, and we will ping everybody to keep comments open. It's been a little while since I've led an assessment, of course, as a reviewer. So I will work with the team just to set expectations on dates and make sure we've got some realistic ones. And I know the TAC have got something open for graduated projects at the beginning of December, so we're unlikely to fit into that sort of time frame, but certainly aiming for perhaps January-ish, and try and chivvy along some of those, some of our other contributors into this live questions phase before carrying on. Thank you very much for attending and helping. And I'll pass back over to you, Evan. Cheers.
Okay. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, so any triage of existing issues, unless someone has a burning issue that they have not yet linked in notes, probably going to save that for next week. And that leaves general stand-up and check-in from partner groups. If anyone has updates, the Supply Chain Integrity Working Group in the OpenSSF, we already covered. I don't know if we have anything else. And then the last item is making sure that we have community demos and or presentations for next week. And it looks like we do. So, except my Zoom is frozen.
Oh, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. Audio works. Video is not. Perfect. Well, with that,
I have one question.
Yeah.
It might have been touched on during updates because I walked off briefly. Do we have next steps on the Slam 26 planning? I know that that's me and Marina and you, Evan. Do we
we
have?
do not have that on the list, and I did not talk about it.
Okay.
Uh,
I think as long
we
as,
do
yeah, I
next
guess I just want to put it on the radar that
Yes.
we need to be synchronizing about that. Make sure that we're on the same page.
Let me add that to our template so
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
it shows up in future weeks.
Cool. And I think that there are things we can be doing this week.
Oh, yeah.
It's not for the entire group unless anybody else is like, hey, I want to get in on the early planning of that.
But you're welcome to if you wish.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have Marina, so yeah, I know Marina talked briefly with Lindsay just to make sure that Lindsay has it on her radar. She knows that we're going to be talking to her. And then I've been reviewing all the past publications from like Slam 22 and Slam 23 where we put out a lot of content afterward. So I've been kind of like looking through that and pretty optimistic. We really do need to be moving now when we're not on holiday
Yeah.
breaks.
Yep. I think Marina may be on holiday break, but yes.
Oh, great.
I think that's what she posted, if I remember correctly, in Slack. But yes. Traveling, I guess she said. So who knows?
She's on her honeymoon.
Okay. Ah, great. Well, I think we're at the end of the meeting, so we'll have everybody drop off and see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for hosting.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.